What are the major takeaways from the 2024 Calix ConneXions conference? That's what we'll be talking about on this episode of Story Connect, the podcast, the Story Connect podcast. My name is Andy Johns, your host with Pioneer, and I'm joined on this episode by one of my favorite people, Megan McCoy. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Andy.
So this is our second annual Calix ConneXions recap. I think after you do it twice and then like one more time next year, then it's permanent. It's a permanent fixture. We're going to have to do this. It
means I get to come back to Calix next year, sure. Yeah.
True. We've got quite a few podcasts. I think we have 9 or 10 of them that we've recorded out here. So hopefully there's a lot of great content, some great ideas being shared out here in the desert at the epicenter of rural broadband this week. Megan, let's dive in. There's been a lot of stuff talked about. We're here Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 3 days worth. There's still some sessions going on that we may catch. But what, when you're flying back east, what are some of the big takeaways that'll be in your mind from this conference?
So last year was my first time at Calix ConneXions, and it was amazing, but it was a lot, right? There's like 2,000, 3,000 folks that are here, so there's so many ideas flying everywhere. This year, I couldn't make it last year, but this year I made it to the Women in Telecom keynote.
Yeah, how was that? I didn't get to go to that one.
Well, yes, that's okay. Not every session is for you, and that's fine. I loved hearing Alex Carter. She's a lawyer for Columbia Law School.
Okay.
And her focus is on negotiation, which, I'm a communicator, so I wasn't quite sure how I would feel about her session. And then I got in there, and it's all about the questions that you're asking. And she, the fine folks at Calix, gave books to everybody that was attending, which is a fantastic bonus, so I get to keep learning. But her entire session was about thinking about the questions and your perspective. You can ask yourself questions before you go into a situation. So she said you have to, whenever you're going into a situation, if it's, talking to someone doing an interview, or if you're working internally at your utility, you have a mirror, questions that you ask yourself.
Okay.
And then you have the window, questions that you're going to ask other folks to have open lines of conversation.
That's a metaphor.
It
no
is
actual
a
mirrors and windows.
I know.
All right,
no,
I got it.
No, don't.
So
you don't have to carry a pocket mirror.
The mirror is what you're asking yourself.
Please, actually, yes, you should carry a mirror and just walk around talking to yourself.
How do you know I don't
yourself,
already?
Okay. But the questions that she posed were really thoughtful. Like, what is the problem that I want to solve for people and then for myself, right? So really a lot of personal brand storytelling that she was helping folks work through. And then when you're talking to other folks, tell me about this. What do you need? And I even found myself, that session was on Sunday, it's Tuesday now. I found myself editing the questions that I was going to ask folks on the podcast. I still found myself assuming things in the questions that I was asking or focusing the conversation in one area. And instead, I had a fantastic conversation with Scott Paul at Beacon Broadband about their customer care team and how they build mentorship and team training opportunities, cross-training opportunities within their team. And I edited the questions to be, tell me about this, tell me about your team, tell me about that. It's a small change, but I really appreciated that. And I think that's something I'm going to keep with me that hopefully will make our podcast episodes even better, although never as good as yours, sir.
Well, I think when the folks, if you're wanting to see those questions in action, that podcast with Scott will be coming out here in the next few weeks after as one of these, because not only did they have that conversation, they recorded that conversation to share with everybody. Nice. Well, that sounds like a good session, worthwhile, and again, not exactly what you might have expected going into that one. For me, the big one, I really enjoyed Dr. Michael Watkins, who was a professor who was speaking here, an author. He talked a lot about strategic planning. He said leadership is all about energy, which I get that. But his basic premise is that annual planning is too slow. If we only wait to do planning every year, there's so much that changes in between those. He breaks it up into 90-day sprints, talks about what all you can accomplish in those.
Do you actually have to run? Because,
Nope. No, I mean, I guess it depends on what your goals are.
Okay.
And I like the quote from him. Vision is where, and then strategy is how to get there. And I think that was a good piece of it. He also talked about backcasting, which was a new...
Oh, what is backcasting?
That's a new way that I think that's going to be an impactful thing to me, because a lot of people do... well, there is that. A lot of people do projection and you're projecting forward, but as he described backcasting, it's you have where you want to be, and then and we do this, but you're basically working backwards from the goal. Like, okay, if I want this done by January 1st, what do I need done by December 1st? And then working your way backwards. So, some of the stuff is not necessarily groundbreaking, never heard before, but it's good to hear it in a new way and good as a refresher.
Yeah, we all need reminders sometimes, and that's why I really appreciate taking the time like this to come to an event and really talk to folks, take a break from where you get kind of caught in the same cycles, doing the same thing every month, and instead you're able to take a moment, breathe, and remember, I should be doing that.
Right.
There were a couple folks that I talked to in the hallways, which is my favorite part of events like this. It's just those conversations. And so many people said the last few years they were running, trying to get fiber builds out, trying to meet the need, especially during, that's the sprint. So apparently running shoes for Story Connect,
Clearly.
That's what we're going to do. But they were hurrying and trying to build and trying to get everything, meet the community needs, especially after the pandemic when everyone realized how critical it was to have community builds like this. And they forgot some things. They were so focused on maybe getting out there into construction that they left some elements of their culture for their utility behind. So a lot of folks are taking a moment, coming here and talking together to figure out what's next. What did we miss? Mm-hmm. How can we take what we've done and make it better and make sure that we're bringing everyone on our team along for the ride?
Makes perfect sense. We've done the same kind of thing when we showed up for this conference with one of the microphone cords being a little too short. So that's the takeaway for me next year is we get a 6-foot cord. We don't have to sit quite as close, and we can back the camera. For those of you who are watching on the video, as all of these have been a little unnaturally close. That's what happens when you only bring a 3-foot microphone cord. You got to be pretty close to the camera. So that was the one takeaway for me.
I don't think that's an applicable takeaway for everyone, but. Okay.
I needed to get that off my chest.
Okay.
The other big takeaways that we've been talking about, what we're hearing over and over again, we've got a couple podcasts about it, is talking about value. And this is similar to what has been at the Calix ConneXions conference the last couple of years, where there's a lot of talk about beyond speed, beyond price, where else are you adding value? And there have been a ton of folks thinking that direction, speaking to those things here. One of the big ones, technology-wise, that's coming up that I didn't necessarily anticipate before this conference was outdoor.
Yes.
Outdoor, and then the smart town piece that you're going to be talking to Wendy Kremer about a little bit from SC Telecom. But kind of adding that value as, if you have the right persona, maybe there's an opportunity where if they've got their Wi-Fi in the house and it's great, maybe there's an opportunity to help them extend that out into the backyard, into the shop, into wherever it is, so that they can enjoy the Wi-Fi out in the yard. And that's an opportunity, A, to help customers and members, but then B, increase a revenue opportunity to add that additional service for folks.
It is, and from the conversations that I've had with folks, it's even beyond that. So I had 2 great interviews, one with Greg Mullis at Trico Go in Georgia, and the other with Brenda Overton from P River Cooperative in Alabama. And both of them were talking about connecting communities. So finding moments and opportunities to help folks connect to what matters in their community. For Brenda and P River Co-op, it was football games, and making sure everybody could have access to a great experience, a Wi-Fi experience there. For Greg at Trico Go, it was connecting folks and making sure food trucks could use payment systems at their parks and rec centers.
Perfect.
And then it expanded to that. So it's not just pushing out for residential areas, but it's finding places in your community where you can share your message, connect your community, but also, it's free advertising. Both of them said that the advertising, that just the name recognition, especially when you're a competitive market and you can serve a need, it's kind of what sets us apart. So it was a lot of fun to talk to both of them about the challenges. Water in humans, did you know that was a challenge when you're providing Wi-Fi outside? Yeah, you're making a confused face.
Well, we're out here in the desert, so water
we're in the
has
desert.
not,
We're in the desert, but the trial and error of figuring out how to amplify a signal outdoors, it depends on the number of people that are there, because the number of people and the water in our bodies impacts your signal. I did not know that before Calix ConneXions. So
Science.
Definitely.
Yeah, some of the new technology they were talking about, they can send a Wi-Fi symbol up to a mile. I mean, that's wild. Just what the applications of that, where, I think they talked about one of the folks, if you have a mile long section of river or lake, you put one on one side, you put another beacon on the other side, and all of a sudden you got Wi-Fi out on the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, that's new and different.
Well, and it really impacts your experience, and everything is about experience right now. So I was vacationing with my family a few weeks ago in Wyoming, and we were in 2 different national parks. One national park had Grand Teton, had amazing service everywhere. I was blown away by that. And the minute we left Grand Teton National Park and went into Yellowstone National Park, we had no signal.
Interesting.
And it was interesting. It reminded me of gig resorts, which WKNT is doing, where they're really focusing on an outdoor area and making that experience amazing. And while I do like to disconnect when I am on vacation, having that access, we've just gotten accustomed to it.
Right.
So I do think that's the next level of subscriber experience, or at least one of the big value adds that you can offer, is to make sure if folks want to stay connected in your community, again, it's connecting what matters most to your subscribers and ensuring a good experience for them.
You've kind of outed yourself, because I remember trying to find you with an email or something when you were in the Tetons, and I was like, oh, she must not have good service. Now I know the difference.
No, I responded that day.
On a competitive standpoint, it's been interesting to me, and I've heard this on stage, and I've heard it from multiple different people. Folks here are feeling some competition from, particularly from the wireless providers. We talked to somebody, I forget if it was on air or not. That's the kind of week it's been. But he said he had 9 competitors.
That was Greg Mullis.
9 competitors he's going up against, and that's tough. I mean, when you're looking at needing to get 40% of the market share to make it feasible, I can do the math well enough to know that it's hard to get 40% when there are 10 total folks in the market. And particularly the talk has been about the wireless folks who are throwing in the wireless connection. The CEO of Calix, Michael Viening, on the first day was talking about how fiber finally came to his house. And when he was going through it, he was happy at $89.
Yep.
But then there were other options in there to discount it further and discount it more and offer Hulu.
Very convoluted path there.
Right. And then by the time it's done, it was cheaper. And so there was, he was pitching it to folks that was lost potential revenue there, but it was also a race to the bottom, where they're just commoditizing the connection and not really delivering any value beyond just the pipe, which is something we've heard Michael talk about before and something that's continuing. But it was interesting to me just how many folks, it used to be that the wireless providers were kind of a last alternative kind of thing for folks. But it sounds like from the folks here, they're feeling a little bit of competition from them now, which is interesting to pay attention to.
And in that same session, it was the opening session for everybody yesterday, he said, y'all, well, he might not have used y'all.
He didn't know. Canadians
don't say y'all, as far as we know. But he said the era of speed is over. We can't focus on that anymore. And that is something that I've heard echoed in every session I have been in, every conversation I have had. We can, but we shouldn't focus on gig because everything's been commoditized. That's a hard word to say when you're sleepy. But because of that race to the bottom, you can't just focus on speed. You have to focus on experience. And I've enjoyed hearing about the persona marketing efforts that so many folks are focusing on. There's some folks, like at Smithville, they're focused just on security messages and that value add for folks. For others, it's something completely different. It's, helping with education and building up for seniors, helping them understand how to use this and connecting them with local high school seniors, to understand it. It's that personal touch. And I got to tell you, if it's down to experience, we got this.
I think you're right. Yeah. I think you're right. And the one thing I'll add, I was going to kind of head towards wrapping it up, but I thought you bring up a great point about the different personas. When you hear that, especially after October 10th, when broadband labels are now required, it was really interesting to hear from folks saying you don't have to necessarily have a different package for all of these different personas. You just have to communicate and message a different way. It could still be the same, gigabit speed or 500 meg, whatever it is that you're doing, but just you don't have to create a new SKU or a new broadband label, a new package for every one of these. You can use the same one, and just the way you talk about it is different. So I thought that was a powerful thing and an important thing if anybody's out there going, I just got these broadband labels done. I can't go and create a bunch of new personas.
Well, and again, it's not creating a package. It's not about the package at all. It's your story,
right.
How you're telling your story. And again, we started the conversation with Alex Carter and how much I appreciated the questions she was encouraging folks to ask. It's about what challenges are out there. What is the goal for your subscribers? So thinking about that, your packaging, your marketing from a goal-based perspective. So think about what is their goal and how can you share your story in a way that resonates with them and lets them know they can meet their goal by working with you.
Our goal at this point is to head out the door and safe travels to get back. Always a pleasure doing these. Our second annual Calix ConneXions recap. We will be back doing this again next year, hopefully with a little bit longer microphone cord. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Megan, thank you for being on.
Always, Andy.
She is Megan McCoy. No, I'm Andy Johns. And until we talk again, keep telling your story.
Story Connect is produced by Pioneer Utility Resources, a communications cooperative that is built to share your story. Story Connect is engineered by Lucas Smith of Lucky Sound Studio.